It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White, and special co-host Cyndi Lago with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's episode. Hey, on this episode, we're continuing our full access series where we're spotlighting female executives across global industry, especially supply chain, that are doing really big things. You know, leaders that motivate, inspire, and energize others. And we're going to surpass that standard here today on today's episode. Hey, really quick. Hello, Greg and Cyndi. How are we doing?
I'm doing quite well.
Well, we've enjoyed the brief pre-show conversation, so y'all got a sneak peek of what's coming.
Yeah.
So we can't.
I mean, first of all, it's great to have Cyndi back. I mean, I think the last time we talked to her were we talking to Jeff Cashman? Was that the last time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So good to have you back for full access.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, so. You know, today's episode is part, again, of our full access series. It's powered by our friends at Capgemini, global leader in consulting, technology services, and digital transformation, amongst other things. We really enjoyed, to your point, Greg, sitting down with Cyndi in a dedicated story to get Cindy's backstory.
Yeah.
We'll publish that in show notes. But today's episode, and before we introduce our guest, I want to share, if you enjoyed this episode here today, be sure to find Supply Chain Now and subscribe for free so you don't miss conversations just like this one. All right, so we have a repeat guest here today, which I'm really tickled about. No further ado, Hannah Kain, President and CEO at ALOM. Hannah, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, and thank you for having me. I'm really tickled to be here with the crowd. And you know, if Cyndi gives me a hard time today, I hope that I'll be on her show and I can return the favor.
Yes, yes. Well, if you notice there, I was already practicing in my mind to make sure I nailed ALOM right way. So jumping right ahead. But nevertheless, it's great to have, you know, we're going to touch on it momentarily, but it was great to meet you in person out in Arizona as part of the WBEC conference. And gosh, we've come a long way since then, but we love our repeat guests. And, you know, you've got such a great story and ton of personality. So we're looking forward to resharing that with our community here today. So
thank you, Scott. Well, I remember we were three-dimensional back then, and now we've got to live in this two-dimensional world. But I look forward to seeing you again when we get three-dimensional.
From your lips to God's good ears, for sure.
I had not thought of it that way. We were three-dimensional back then. That's brilliant.
That's just the first lesson learned, Cyndi and Greg, that we're going to get from Hannah today. So Greg, where are we starting here?
Well, I'm dying because, you know, it's not that Hannah has an accent or anything, but I'm actually dying to hear a little bit about your backstory, your origin story, as we do with our superheroes on this show. So for starters, tell us where you're from and maybe a little bit about your upbringing and early life.
Well, Greg, I'm super happy we're not talking about my accent because, you know, I'm kind of a little bit touchy with that. So I was born in Denmark, in the town of Hans Christian Andersen, the fairy tale teller. And I was actually born not too far away from where he was born, and grew up in Denmark in a very international atmosphere, had a business career there. I have a dark past in politics as well, where I was in politics back in Denmark. And in 1990, my husband and I decided to buy a one-way ticket. And we immigrated to the US, and we started out on the East Coast. We were on the East Coast for 4 years, and then we continued on to Silicon Valley in '94. We've been here ever since. So some of our friends did the trajectory over the Atlantic Ocean, etc. They said next stop will be Fiji Islands. but we actually stopped in Silicon Valley, so I'm here right today in San Jose, and ALOM is headquartered in Fremont. So in '97, I and a group of supply chain specialists started ALOM. So that's kind of the big overview of my journey. But the accent is solid Danish.
So I have to tell you, first, I want to hear a little bit about Denmark, and now I'm going to tell you why, because my family immigrants also from Denmark, but to Argentina. So we speak Argentinian Spanish with a Danish accent. So from 1830 till now. But tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Denmark. And I mean, it's such a fascinating place, you know, kind of the pivot point for Scandinavia. Of course, only Danes would say that, maybe, but but I can get away with that.
I totally agree, Greg. Well, you know, I think when you're a kid growing up, you are just wherever you are. You're not thinking so much about it. So I've got to have the adult view and looking back at how it was growing up, and it was a very safe environment. And I think the world was generally a safer place, but it was an incredibly safe place. We ran around and did whatever we did. And I'm thinking back and wondering that I even made it to adulthood, right? So we did a lot of wild things. And you know, I've always, when I look back, I've always had this entrepreneurial streak. So I did a lot of entrepreneurial things very early on in my life. My earliest memory is from I was 4 years old, and my husband, or my brother, and I figured out that we could go over in the forest and dig up plants and sell them to garden owners. And you know, the cost of goods was low, right?
Right.
And,
your first supply chain venture.
So that was at age 4, and so I did a lot of entrepreneurial things and got involved also a little bit. My dad was a college professor, and on the side he was also an entrepreneur at heart. My dad was in concentration camp, didn't get the opportunities he really should have gotten, and that actually impacted my view of life quite a bit. But he was running some side businesses and sort of at home, and I got very involved in them and ran some of them at the tender age of 12 and 13. And the CPA would show for the annual review, and who was he meeting, right? so I was very much into business at that time already. So you know, looking back, I had a blast growing up. I did a lot of different things. Denmark is a very open country, and you get to try a lot of different things. So I availed myself of a lot of the free education, both at university, you know, so I've got 2 university degrees, etc. But also sort of evening classes and things like that. And you try different things. I went to a Russian class, and you know, I didn't think the teacher was so good, and it was so fun. So I only learned to say Sputnik, right? That was the only
the only thing you needed to know back then.
And it actually comes in very handy when you're in Russia, that you kind of know the alphabet. But you know, I did a lot of other things that I really enjoyed. So and that have come in handy since then. So I had a blast growing up, and yeah.
What a great entrepreneurial foundation. I mean, you know, you basically started your business at 4 years old. I'm not sure there are a handful of people on the planet who can say that. So, I mean, that's really powerful stuff. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. So, Cyndi, you want to see what you've been doing since she's a grown up?
Yeah, since you're a grown up. I'd like to understand a little bit about your professional journey. And I think the thing that intrigued me the most was, you know, in 1990, how did you make this decision you were just going to up and buy a one-way ticket? I mean, you know, that's a pretty entrepreneurial thing to do. So there had to be some kind of in your professional journey a stopping point, or just felt like this was the next step? I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, something had happened before 1990, and that was that even though when I was a teenager, I was dreaming of starting my company and stuff, in my mind, there was no Prince Charming. And surprise, all of a sudden there he is. So I had gotten married in the meantime, right? And we were both a little bit at a career quandary. So first of all, I had made it up through the ranks in the corporate world, but I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had worked in pockets that were very entrepreneurially focused, but it was very hard at the time in Denmark. Denmark was a very deeply socialist country at the time, and it was very, very hard to really start a business. Mm-hmm. And so I could see that would be very hard for me to fulfill that dream. My husband is a computer scientist, and Denmark was not exactly the center of the world when it came to that. So let's see, and in '88 we started thinking about maybe it would be a good thing to get to where things are and we can both live our dreams. And in 89 we then started solidifying it a little bit more and started making plans, and in 1990 we made it happen. So but it was a tough decision. I think, you know, both seemed from leaving family behind and friends, and for me it was also, and I had a political career, as I said, and also my English was horrific, right? So I really left my language behind, right? And that was a big loss for me, to be honest. And because I was so active, both business-wise and politically, I was used to sort of, the phone would ring 10, 20 times a night. Do you want to join the board of this? And do you want to do that? And I immigrated and the phone didn't ring. Right? And, you know, it took me a month and I was like, okay, I'm starting over. Right. And all my contact, my Rolodex, as it was called at that point of time, right? And my Rolodex, I could just burn it, right? It didn't matter because I was in a totally new location. And people would look at all the prestigious things I had done and they would have no idea about what that was, right? So I was just starting over and rebuilding. And that was, I think, when I look back on my life, that awakening of being the immigrant and starting over, that was a really big awakening for me. That was, you know, maybe emotionally harder than starting the company.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that, especially very close to my family as well. So I can see like getting up and leaving. There's a lot of emotional ties with that. So when you got here, what did you do first? I mean, you know,
I got a job with a small company called Citibank, and a bag manufacturer, and I built a marketing sales department for them, and traveled around. I went to, I think, something like 30 states while I did that. So I got a good geography lesson in the US, right? I've probably been to more states than most Americans, right. You know, just those 4 years.
Got me beat.
Right.
And then I tried to be involved in different organizations and you know, develop my network. And I've got to say, in '94, when I then moved to Silicon Valley, then that really took off. I started when I got to Silicon Valley. I felt I met a lot of people who were thinking the same way. Of course, excited about technology, very bright, entrepreneurial people. And it was very inspirational for me to come to Silicon Valley and hang with those people. And the other thing that's wonderful in Silicon Valley is a lot of people are immigrants. So what you know, they're very open. They want to get to know other people. So there are all these big groups of misfits like me who speak with an accent, right? And we hang together, and then we create great things together. And that, I mean, that was just a really wonderful experience. So then my husband and I decided that, so I went to accent improvement class, believe it or not. I know that I still have the accent, but I did go to accent improvement class. My poor husband had to listen to me constantly saying, there's somebody at the door. That was one of the things you had, and he would run out.
Now you don't have to say that anymore.
and the other thing we did was we recognized that having a good frame of reference about what's going on is an important part of language. Right? I mean, so we started subscribing to the New Yorker, and the litmus test was once we would laugh at 90% of the cartoons, we got the you know, American way of life and background, etc. So, but
Hannah, did you track metrics on that 90% week in, week out?
Oh, thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, only 90% at the best are funny anyway, right? So
No.
you probably were scoring 100%.
I'm getting there. And then for many years, and I actually still do, I read with a way of looking words up, phrases up in dictionaries. I mean, I would have a dictionary next to, so, you know, I really made it a project to improve my language, to build my network, to become a citizen, to those type of things to be integrated into the US.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot all at once. I mean, it sounds like a lot, Cyndi. Right?
Yeah, it's an incredible amount. I mean, I think that, you know, I was going to ask her about her eureka moment, but I think she just went through that a little bit. So I, you know, from that viewpoint and now, you know, to where you're at today, when you look at what you've done and these positions that you've held, you know, kind of how does, you know, you talk a little bit about, you know, being a citizen, setting some of those goals. So as you continue to expand in your career, how do you see some of these things changing? I mean, you know, you came from a world where, you know, your father, like you said, you know, had a very different background than you did. And, you know, I'm sure that you sat back and it's just crazy. So, you know, when you think about that, what was the toughest part of that? Like, what was really the you know, I mean, it seems like you took everything in stride and you did a really great job just saying, okay, let me, you know, I'm going to take this challenge on, but, you know, I'm sure you had some difficulties and how did you surpass those?
You know, so the thing is that in a way you can have it all, but you pay a price, right? So, I mean, obviously, when you immigrate, you leave family and friends behind, right? There were a lot of things I missed, family things I missed. And of course, today it's a little bit easier, right? Because we've got a lot of connectivity tools, right? And if nothing else, we can see each other two-dimensionally, right? So just celebrated Christmas with the family in a two-dimensional way. But yeah, certainly there were that was a loss of quality of life to leave family behind, and as you understand, also spending a big part of my life sort of rebuilding, connecting, and so forth. But overall, you know, I'd set the goal and I wanted to do this, and so I think in life, once you decide to do that, you know, you've got to understand that there will be obstacles. Mm-hmm. And you know that also when you build a company, or if you get kids, or, you know, anything that happens in life, you have got pros and cons, right? And it's not like you say, oh yeah, I want kids, but if they get sick, I don't want anything to do with them, right? You know? Right. And it's the same when you immigrate, right? There are things coming with it, or when you build a company. I mean, people are thinking things are a straight line, right? And it's one of the things drives me nuts with the equity investments and VCs, that they think that it's a straight line. Okay, we go from here to there. No, nothing is a straight line, right? You go up and down, right? So it's you have to have the stamina and the vision to be able to deal with the obstacles.
So Hannah, I'll tell you, you've
Brilliant.
got just such an inspirational story. I mean, to overcome the obstacles that you've described in your home country with your home friends and family and in your native language, that is a feat. So to do what you did, that one-way ticket, as Cyndi was asking about, and then to take the time, set the goals, overcome, achieve, and then found this global fast-growing business. It's astonishing. So I'm glad. I think hopefully our listeners will gain inspiration as much as I have from the couple of times we've chatted. So I want to go back for a second before we talk about ALOM and get some more of your industry thoughts there and some of your recognitions. I want to go back to where we first met. You first appeared on Supply Chain Now. Good old Paul Noble and Barrison was out there with me, Greg, out in Arizona at the DEMSCA 2020 event in February. So to give y'all a time mark there, I was thinking late February 2020, right, Hannah?
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. I know.
In early February, we were in Vegas at the RLA show, right?
That's right. Reverse
right
logistics.
After the Super Bowl, where we all know what happened.
Chiefs won 2020. So we're sitting there, and I'm interviewing Hannah, and we enjoyed a variety of the programming. I think Hannah addressed the DEMSCA crowd. It was my first DEMSCA event, and we're talking about Diverse Manufacturing Supply Chain Alliance is what I think the acronym stands for. Great people, wonderful organization. Greg, that's where we met the
Kevin L. Jackson and David Burton.
Yes, and the team of incredible people, and Latia Thomas from Morgan State University,
Latia.
right?
Yeah.
So that has been such a great event and a lot of great conversations. But Hannah, what did you? I know you're deeply involved in a variety of industry boards. For DEMSCA, though, for your participation in DEMSCA, why is that important to you?
I think for a couple of different reasons. So, of course, ALOM is a woman-owned business, and so we get the privilege of working with corporations who value those type of relationships, and they have many of the large corporations have supplier diversity groups, and they try to get diverse businesses in and get them situated within the supply chain. So, of course, it's wonderful for us to leverage that. DEMSCA also has a big educational element, so elevating diverse businesses. And I think that's really important because DEMSCA's focus, so I'm also very involved in Women Business Enterprise National Council, which has 16,000 women-owned businesses as part of being certified as part of its network. But I think DEMSCA, what's really interesting with DEMSCA is the focus on the larger businesses that are in diverse and in manufacturing. And it's not so easy to build a business that's privately owned, that's really scaled, right? And so these are really high level CEOs that make it into those type of positions. And then the third element, which is maybe the most important to me, is that diverse businesses, it's been proven that diverse businesses spread the profits and the money coming into them much more out to diverse communities. So it's a way for corporations to really help people in diverse communities. So ALOM, just to give that as an example, we have about 60% women, which is very unusual in the type of industry we're in. We're 60% women. We have at one point in time we were laughing at headquarters saying we have only two employees who are not protected class. All the rest are different races, different sexual orientations, different, we are all coming from the different backgrounds, right? And so I think that's very common in diverse businesses, and that it's a way for us. For instance, we have a lot of Latinos employed, right? So it's a way to get money out into that community, right, and create jobs in those communities. And for me, that's really important. So we have a very strong supplier diversity program ourselves. Last year, we spent more than 35% of our purchasing dollars with diverse businesses. I think that's best in class, right?
Outstanding.
Right?
That's outstanding.
And it's a cause that's really near and dear to my heart. So, and this year, WBEC is launching some really exciting programs that probably your listeners will want to hear more about. But it's about the digital world. It's about the digital supply chain, right? So that's another thing I'm really fascinated by is the physical supply chain, the digital supply chain, and the financial supply chain, and making them go hand in hand, and the tools you need to integrate them.
Love that. And we'll make sure to include a link to WBEC programming and the organization in the show notes of the episode. I want to switch gears now over to ALOM. But before we do, and before we level set and make sure our listeners understand what Hannah's organization does, Cyndi, if I can put you on the spot for a second. I should have done this on the front end. But really quick, tell us about what you do, and before we switch back gears over to ALOM.
So at CAP, I run the supply chain practice for North America. So have all of it from end to end. My background affords me that opportunity to have done it end to end. So I'm, as I said earlier, I think I'm looking very forward to talking a little bit about ALOM and Hannah's background, because I actually did run a third-party logistics company myself at one point in time, and also was a certified women's business owner in my past. And it is not an easy feat to get certified as a women business owner. So
great point.
For Hannah's great work there. So I get to experience, transformation with our companies every day. To Hannah's point about physical versus the financial versus the digital, that was a great point of way to look at it, because it really is been a huge experience for everyone. And, and getting into 2021, knowing that we have a new normal, knowing that, you have to be able to build supply chains of the future that can deal with disruption. So, really, how do we work together to make, women in this field better, stronger, as well as, how do we help our clients in understanding what to do with their supply chains and how to transform them? It's a lot of, everybody's kind of, oh, let's build efficiencies and, let's focus on getting that done just in time and worried about that. And they really, on the other hand, have lacked flexibility. So a lot of my day right now is spent with companies and how do you transform and drive that flexibility? And, I've been looking at what Hannah's been doing, especially during the pandemic. I'm anxious to talk a little bit about what you do, Hannah, what the company does, because I see a lot of, really being able to be agile and flexible and drive your supply chain in a different way. And just that is a huge secret sauce to what you're doing. And so why don't you, now I've told you a little bit about myself, why don't you tell us a little bit about what ALOM does and, where you're at, and especially how some of the great things you guys have done since the pandemic.
Thank you, Cyndi. Well, it's one of my favorite topics, right? So it's really outsourced supply chain. I think you can think about us as a combination between a fulfillment company, a technology company, and a light contract manufacturer. The problem is always when you create a new category, how do you describe what it is you're really doing? So we are very integrated. Our customers are mainly very big corporations coming to us with typically a new project, sometimes an existing project, and trying to see how they can design the supply chain globally, but more importantly for us, execute on it. So we are executing on it. We have the warehouses, etc. So Ford Motor Company is one of the customers we can talk about. So we are doing a number of different activities for them. And one of them is a website where you can go in and actually buy a Ford product, and you will see the Ford logo, and you may go in and click on the submit button, and once you pay it, the order actually comes to us. In the meantime, we have also designed the website. And so we have the warehouse where we are storing the product, of course, but we've also produced the product, right? So we have done the entire manufacturing process of that product. And then we are doing the fulfillment, and we are processing your credit card. And when you decide you don't want it, and somebody was talking about ILA, when you decide you don't want it and you return it, then we take it back and credit your credit card, right?
All right. Hannah, I've got to call timeout for a second. That what you've just described there, and to do it for a Ford, you know, holy cow! How long did it take? I mean, give us an idea for something that massive, completely integrated for, you know, a major automotive company. How long did it take you from, from when you started to get to the point where you can fulfill the whole shebang?
If a customer comes to us and we don't know them, it can take a very long time, because what happens is we touch a lot of data. So they've got to see, how do we handle the data? Do we have the cybersecurity? So there's a lot of due diligence that they do. If it's an existing customer, and we do business with a fair amount of the Fortune 50 companies, right? If it's a big company where we are already in, then we can get it up and running fairly fast. And that was actually what we did during the pandemic, right? So we are very active in the automotive business, as you understand, and technology, but we also have a very significant segment in the medical industry. And so we've got all the medical certifications, the ISO 13485 and FDA registration and all of those type of things. Mm-hmm. And when the pandemic hit, we actually did a number of different things already that were supporting pandemic recovery. But I made it one of my goals, my number one goal during the pandemic was, of course, to keep everybody safe at ALOM. And but I also decided that I wanted us to be part of the solution. And so that was really a key goal for me. And because we have all the technology, etc., to keep track of things, traceability is a really important thing in medical supply chain. And a lot of domain expertise in testing. We went into the test market, and we ended up shipping and currently ship a fair amount of the test kits used in the US. So we've got, and we went up really fast. Customers came in and we went up really fast. You know, I'm talking weeks from they come and say, hey, we need help. So we shipped the first one. You know, there's a lot of diligence in setting that up, but we had quite a few departments where everybody worked really, really hard to make this happen and understood how important this was for everybody. So we are right now, we ramped up really fast. We increased our domain expertise in that area. I mean, you know, you have to, right? You know, yes, it was something we already knew. Yes, we already had the systems, but there's still new twists each time you scale up in a new area. So I'd say it was really exciting. It was really hard work. It was fantastic to see the team pull together around it.
Love it. Love it. So right before I pass the baton back over to Greg, and we talk about some of the things that y'all have been recognized for, you and the company, give us a quick, scope around how large of an organization globally, what your footprint looks like. What does that look like?
Well, we are on 5 continents. So I visited Antarctica, but we don't have a facility there. We have 19 locations. As I said, we are headquartered in Fremont, California. We have a subsidiary in the Netherlands, and that's managing our EMEA business. And then we have a subsidiary in Hong Kong. It seemed like a good idea at the time. No, I'm not so sure. That's managing our APAC business. And then everything kind of funnels up. And so we have got systems and integrations that go global. Of course, we have now adjusted, we all the time adjust to the geopolitical situation, right? EMEA it just got a little bit more complex now with Brexit, and so they're all the time we're twisting things. In terms of workforce, we ramp up. So here with the COVID testing kits, we got a lot of contract workers in. And so we have set up systems to be able to manage a really, really fast scale up throughout our network. So it's worked out really well.
Love that. I love these stories. Certainly some of the best good news, Greg, we've heard about through this, this trying time frame we're in, is these companies that are able to adjust. I'm not going to say the word pivot. I just said it, but seriously, kidding aside, that are able to absorb, keep doing business, adjust our operations to do good and to help us meaningfully move the needle, not lip service in the fight against COVID-19, but really help folks. So Greg, let's talk more about some of the recognitions they've gotten here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many to choose from, but let's just talk about a couple recent ones generally. So in September, you were identified as a woman leader in supply chain, and in the in the discussion around that, you talked a little bit about your history and said a female supply chain CEO was quite unusual, and particularly when you started ALOM 23 years ago, right? That would have been exceptionally unusual back then. So tell us a little bit about what is so meaningful about that particular award.
I think I always take care with generalizing between the genders, right? But I think overall women have a very collaborative, a strong collaborative spirit, and for me, supply chain is very much about collaboration. Nobody does supply chain alone, right? It's about collaboration between different suppliers, different entities, some of them parallel, some of them hierarchical, and pulling everything together. I'm always saying supply chain is like cooking a very complex meal, right? And getting all of it together at the same time, and hopefully serving it beautifully, and nobody knows all the sweat that went down behind the scenes, right?
And I'm trying to capture all these great things. I can't wait to put on back of t-shirts. I can't quite keep up with you. I love it.
So, I think that women are just really very suited for supply chain business, and that's why and actually, in purchasing, women actually have higher salaries than men on average. At least that was the case a couple of years ago, right? So
I knew it. Well, I'm so glad I got out of purchasing.
So I think it's a very fantastic career for women, right? So I'm always advocating. I'm saying, if somebody doesn't know where they want to go, supply chain is fantastic, right? It's a fantastic career. And there's so many different things you can do in supply chain, whether you are on the nerdy side or you are on the extrovert side, it's a really big spectrum. And I think supply chain can be very inclusive, right? And give a lot of opportunities to people, no matter which walks of life they come from. And so for me, getting more women into supply chain is, doing good for the supply chain. It's doing good for the world, right? Because you can use supply chain for doing a lot of good, and you're doing really well for the women who are in supply chain. So what can we do to get more women on the track?
Yeah.
I think talk about
That's the next question, right?
all the
How do we do that?
opportunities, right? And I've got to say the last 10 years, we've gotten so many great role models, right? And so many women who are running big manufacturing companies. I mean, think about General Motors and Mary Barra, right? We have got women who are seen in these roles, and I think that's really fantastic. And then we've got a lot of different organizations supporting women, and I'm very much for that support network and creating visibility. So I know that some women are sensitive to don't single me out because I'm a woman, but I figure, hey, I'll take whatever help I can get from whoever wants to give it, right? And I think that's a really helpful and important thought process for women to have, because there's still obstacles for women. There's still unconscious bias. There's still ideas about how women should act. There's still an idea that maybe being in manufacturing is a little bit not so feminine, or if you have a discussion that maybe gets a little bit sort of direct, right? That the women shouldn't have so direct organizations. They should be more circumspect and things like that. So all that unconscious bias still works against the women. So, if there's some areas where women can get help,
let's do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's funny.
Greg, before you go ahead, I'm sorry.
That whole bias, I think, is really, really natural. Maybe a little more foreign for me because I was brought up by three very direct women: my grandmother, great-grandmother, and mother. And I never had any question that women could be direct or that they could be involved in business. My great-grandmother was a barber in the 30s in the US, which was absolutely unheard of then. She cut men's hair, which was absolutely unheard of then.
Wow. That's a new one for me, Greg.
So, yeah, right? Nan. We called her Nan. I didn't even know what her actual name was until I was 12 years old. But I think that more people, what I guess I didn't realize is that not very many people have had that experience, and they haven't had, kind of the worldliness that you have, right? In having lived in the US and in Europe and visited so many states. And I think it's important for people. I do think it's important for these kind of discussions to happen. And it's important for people like you, Hannah, and for Cyndi to put yourselves out there, to, whether you do it willingly or whether you do it begrudgingly, allow us, and we really appreciate it, to hold you up as a powerful woman. Because as Scott said at the beginning of this, if you can see it, you can be it. And I have 3 daughters, and we have always encouraged them that they can do anything. And 2 of them are already off doing their thing. So that's good.
Love it.
But I think it's a powerful, powerful thing for folks to see.
So, and I'm always saying, don't be like me. Don't try to be like me, right? I can be a role model in that you can see what you could be if you want to, but be yourself, right?
Yeah.
Everybody brings something of themselves to the party, and that's an important thing that we've got to nurture. So for me, it's really, there's a lot of people who helped me on my way. And if I started writing the thank you cards, I probably should do. I can probably spend this year writing thank you cards, right? So many people have helped me on the way. And one of my obligations is to help others. So I spend a lot of time paying it forward and helping others and mentoring others. And that's one of the most gratifying things I do.
Love
okay,
that.
Scott, you can be allowed to say something
Thank
now.
you very much. This is, hey, these kind of, to Greg's points, these kind of conversations that really get my juices going, because really it serves a key mission that we have here at Supply Chain Now. And and very frankly and very transparently, it can be clunky at times, right? Because we want to put an emphasis on a lot of things that all of you are speaking to, and Greg, that you were just talking about, and Hannah has been clearly it's key values for her and her organization. And there's certainly obviously no one size fits all, and just the invites to come on and share. Folks kind of want those invites to land differently. And so we've learned a lot in the last few years as we've really very intentionally and deliberately tried to not only confront our blind spots that we have here, right, just because from our walks of life, but help our audience and our community, more importantly, do the same in their blind spots. So before we adjust our switch gears over to COVID-19 and ALOM, I'd love to get Cyndi to weigh in on how, we're talking about see it, be it, and any words of inspiration or any components of your journey that you'd like to share. I love how Hannah just put it. Don't be like me, Cyndi, what are some of your thoughts you have?
Well, I loved Hannah's analogy of the recipe and like putting the food on the table and making sure it's all warm, I mean, that's like a supply chain in its own, right? So, if you can do that, you can do anything, right? Yeah. But, I think for me, and I know when we had our conversation one-on-one, it was like, be bold, and I think, to Hannah's point earlier, I think the most uncomfortable thing as a woman in this field is to be bold sometimes, because you are, you are a minority in this field, and it is a big deal. I mean, I remember, when I had my own warehousing company and I could drive a forklift, and the people, they looked at me, the truck drivers would come in and be like, what? And I'm like, get your truck, back it up, let's go, and
you need me to do it for you.
And I'm like, I don't want to be here all day, so let's move it. Right. And it was, I think being, not seeing yourself through other people's expectations of your gender, for example, is really important. And to Hannah's point, you don't be me, but see yourself as you want it to be seen, right? Pay it forward, be that person you want to be, and, be bold about it.
Love that. Love that.
That is,
and also,
gold. I got to tell you, don't see it through the lens of your gender or what people expect from your gender. Just see it through the lens of being who you need to be or doing the job that you need to do. That is so powerful.
Well put. And I got to go back. One of my favorite things, nobody does supply chain alone. The beautiful simplicity and accuracy of that statement. Hannah, I might owe you some licensing fees because I want to put that on a t-shirt, but all right. So Greg, let's keep driving.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we kind of went down that path, because I think that's an important part of that recognition, the women leader in supply chain recognition that you received. But you spoke to paying it forward, Hannah, and ALOM also received a Gold Stevie, correct, award for how you participated in helping to distribute PPE during COVID-19. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we walked away with 2 Gold Stevies last year, and I was just really, I was blown away. Yeah. One was for how we worked during the pandemic, and it was for both our efforts to keep our employees safe. So we did very early on very extensive plans for how to keep everybody safe. And we went through iterations to increase the safety as more became known about the virus. And I think we are right now up at between 60 and 70 different actions that we have taken throughout our facilities to make sure that everybody is safe. And then, of course, the ramp up to not just the PPE, but also, more importantly, the COVID-19 test kits, right? And that entire segment. And we have a number of other customers. We have that does COVID-19 prevention products. We have one customer that does filters with purifiers with HEPA filters. that read out the vaccine in the particles in the air. And so we are availing ourselves of that. And, you know, if you go into a restroom in any of our facilities, you will see those purifiers put to good use in the cafeterias and any place where we've got people in enclosed environments. And the other one was for our best management team in the world. And I was really proud of that. I mean, you know, I think for anybody, I mean, certainly I'm proud when I get a personal award, and honored to be recognized, but having your team be recognized is just fantastic, right? That's there's being recognized for the output, and then there's being recognized for just the way you go about things. So we do a lot in both sustainability, etc. And I like those recognitions where we're being recognized for how we go about things. So I am very proud of the staff I have. So that was very meaningful for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's great for them to be recognized. I mean, because you're in the forefront. I don't want to say you expect it, but it's more natural for it to happen. But for your team to perform so well to receive an award it's got to be very gratifying.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you know, one of the things for people to join ALOM, typically what we look for is somebody who really takes pride in their job. And I don't care which level we are talking about, you know, you can take pride in your job and just do really great in your job. So we have a lot of staff members who really take ownership to their job and to creating the correct result, but also doing it in the best possible way. And you know, you get people like that to collaborate and work together, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, right?
Love it. Love it. Quick question before we shift gears over to kind of, well, we've been talking, having a global conversation thus far, but we're going to ask you one more question around other things you're tracking. But are you still, I know when we met in February at Demskin, Arizona, you were at the time on the board for the National Association of Manufacturers. Is that still something you're doing?
Oh yeah, I do it, and I'm super proud of what the NAM has been doing this past year, because the NAM has really taken a leadership role in the entire pandemic area, both in terms of getting relief out to businesses, but also in terms of a dissemination of information, campaigns, those type of things. So, you know, really, that has been really important work that has been done there. So I've been very gratified to be part of that. And of course, NAM has also the Manufacturing Institute, which does, among other things, recognition of women in manufacturing and diversity and inclusion. And many of us have taken a pledge as part of that for our inclusion activities. And then, of course, Manufacturing Leadership Council, which is for advanced technology, industry 4.0, etc. That's a separate entity.
Right.
But I don't know where you wanted me to go with that. So I was just talking about it.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
The NAM does great work for the industry. They do a ton of work helping shape the narrative. So many consumers that aren't familiar with manufacturing, you know, really painting an accurate picture. You know, study after study has come out where parents who are the first consultants any of us ever use, right? They're guiding their kids into different industries because of the assumptions they're making about how industry is, and manufacturing is one of the industries that certainly has that stigma. And you know, every industry is fighting for talent. Manufacturing needs it, but I love what NAM does, and of course, it needs great leaders like you, Hannah. And I appreciate how that's part of your give back.
Thank you. And you know, I think a lot of people by now are familiar with Manufacturing Day. So I can disclose that I've been on the NAM board for 15 years. And wow. This came up more than 10 years ago. We were sitting, you know, maybe with a drink or two and talking about how we could change the message around manufacturing. And Manufacturing Day was born, and it was very small the first couple of years, and now it's like this huge movement.
Massive.
I love it. Manufacturing Day. And we need to add a link about that to show notes as well. And as you know, my grandfather retired from Kimberly-Clark as a machine operator. And I'm ashamed. I wish, you know, I didn't step foot into a manufacturing site until after college. And that is such a lost opportunity. And that's why we've been proud of some of the things that we've been doing to even talk manufacturing supply chain with elementary kids. So, but love that, Hannah. Let's, as we start to wrap here, you know, we've talked, gosh, we have had a wide ranging conversation, but I love it. All right. There's not enough. Hannah is a very energizing person to speak with. What's one other thing that we haven't touched on yet? When you look at global supply chain and global business, whether it's what we've gone through or what lies ahead in a pretty tough year that 2021 is going to be, what sticks out, Hannah, that you're tracking more than others?
Obviously, the entire freight sector is in big upheaval, and you know, I think everybody who's in supply chain are tracking both inflation going on, you know, rate increases and container shortages, and et cetera, et cetera. So that entire freight area. And then I have, for the last 5 to 10 years, been tracking and following the entire geopolitics and trade policy, et cetera, and the compliance management, right? So huge areas, and I just see that exploding, right? And you look at what's going on in China right now, where you know, free speech is being super suppressed, right? And a third of a big part of companies in China cannot be audited for corporate social responsibility because of these issues, etc. You know, the impact on the supply chain long term has got to be tremendous, and I think that entire shift is going to be pretty significant. And I was just flabbergasted. You know, when you follow something, you have an idea about what's going to happen. And I was flabbergasted seeing how much China's export to the US actually went up in the fourth quarter. I'd never thought that was going to happen, right? But I think there's going to be some shifts happening because of that. So that entire trade, Brexit, we already talked a little bit about those entire trade shifts as part of the geopolitics and the increased compliance requirements, where it's getting next to impossible to ship textiles, and you know, a lot of those type of things. I'm following really closely. And the third thing I want to say is technology, just in general, right? So I'm known for saying that we have had a decade until a couple of years ago where complexity in supply chain outran technology. So things got more complex than technology could solve. You know, the curves technology didn't catch up. We're starting to see more of a catch up now. And I think that's really interesting. So, and certainly some of the AI solutions out there are going to be helping, etc. A couple of years ago, I was looking at blockchain and I was thinking, oh, that's really interesting. I've soured a little bit on blockchain. I just think that, I mean, blockchain is about trust. And some of the people who need to be part of those trusted networks are just, you know, 5, maybe 10 years away from being part of it. It's such an interesting technology, but you know, I'm just souring a little bit on that. So, but certainly technology is another area I'm following. So I'd say if I had to pick 3, those would be the 3.
Love it. You know, we got through a whole conversation without saying artificial intelligence or machine learning. I cannot believe it, folks. But I appreciate you sharing. I think from that trade standpoint, you know, seeing some, obviously the environment, the U.S., China, but the trade deal that was put in place, Pacific Rim, you know, a month or so ago, and then all still what's to come. So it will be fascinating to keep our finger on the pulse. All right. So Cyndi and Greg, I hate to wind things down. Cyndi, I want to make sure in a second, we're going to make sure folks know how to connect with you. But Hannah, how can folks connect with you and ALOM?
Well, we have a website that's www.alom.com, ALOM.com. And if you want my email, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Hannah Kain, so that's fairly easy. And my email is hkain@alom.com. So pretty easy to get a hold of me, and would love to help anybody who needs help out there.
But Hannah, I still get priority on my emails to you, right? I'm still.
Yeah, I've got a special folder for you.
Okay.
Auto saved, and it's not trash.
Okay. Hey, I'll take that. I will take it. I love it.
Ask one question before we wrap up.
Sure.
What does ALOM stand for?
Well,
good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the official name is Advanced Logistics Operations and Manufacturing. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Outstanding.
I knew it had a very good acronym.
Cyndi, I've gotten through 2 conversations. I didn't ask that question. Shame on me.
She's a pro.
Yeah, seriously. So, Cyndi, I really appreciate your partnership on this series. It was great to kind of take a deep dive into your backstory, one of the last episodes we did. But let's make sure between your thought leadership and the great work you're doing, and of course, a ton of content that Cap puts out, how can folks connect with you and Capgemini?
So obviously we have a website as well, so you can connect through Capgemini. LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways to connect, to be quite honest, just because I look at it, I spend time, but sending me emails, I get a ton of emails. So LinkedIn's always the best.
Perfect.
From my perspective. But, I think that Hannah and I need to get our own blog going, for women.
Love that idea.
Definitely. I'll be the first subscriber. I'll grab some popcorn and a Diet Coke. And let's make it a live stream so y'all can interact. Man, that'd be a blast. Well, Cyndi Lago, thanks so much to you. Of course, thanks to Hannah Kain, President, CEO of ALOM. But hey, before I let Greg and Cyndi both go, as we talked about in the pre-show, we're going to talk about Hannah as if she's not here, because she shared so much stuff. And if y'all can't tell, I'm a big fan. I drank the Kool-Aid, the Hannah Kain Kool-Aid, when we met in person, because it's just such a, I think it's an inspirational story. The journey she talked about on the front end. And you think about some of the challenges we have, man, put that aside and buy a one-way ticket somewhere else. I mean, that to me really is inspiring. But what's your favorite thing? Greg, I'll start with you. What's your favorite thing that Hannah shared here today?
Well, favorite thing is that she's Danish. But my second favorite, and probably, the more poignant lesson I'll take away, and I think that everyone needs to latch onto, is that success is not linear. It is not a straight line, right? I would encourage my friends in the venture capital world to recognize that. But everyone, there are always more challenges than you can contemplate whenever you do anything. And that's what keeps it from being a straight line. And Hannah, if there's any red thread that you've carried throughout this entire discussion, it's been that when you set up a new customer, even when they're in the same business, it's not a straight line, right? They're not going to have the same challenges when you deal with them. So that to me that's the biggest takeaway. Excellent. All right, Cyndi, same question. What's your favorite thing Hannah shared here today?
I think my favorite thing is how much she gives back. I think, it's not just all that she's accomplished, and she's very well accomplished, obviously, and great personality, and really love the entrepreneurial spirit. But I also think the importance that she places on paying it forward, and, making sure that, the diversity and how much that can strengthen a company, I think is just so important that we all need to realize.
Excellent. Well said. And with that, we've got to leave it here for today. But big thanks again, our featured guest, Hannah Kain, President, CEO of ALOM. Thanks so much, Hannah.
Thank you. My pleasure being here.
Big thanks to Cyndi Lago with Capgemini for joining us as our special co-host. We got to do that more often. Thanks so much, Cyndi.
Exactly.
Look forward to seeing you again soon. And we're going to take you up on that Hannah Cyndi Power Hour live stream. I think that there's something to that, Greg.
Hannah and Lago. It sounds like a TV show, doesn't it? I mean,
well, and Greg, always a pleasure. We've had a string of really incredible conversations with some great people here as we kick off 2021. Thankfully, despite challenging times are going to continue, but you know, the fact, going back to my favorite saying that Hannah shared, we don't do it alone. We do it together. And there's an analogy there far beyond supply chain. So on that note, to our audience, hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Hey, I've got a Hannah Kain t-shirt and probably a tattoo, but hey, I'm transparent about that. But you can find more conversations at supplychainnow.com just like this. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Hey, on behalf of this panel here and our whole team at Supply Chain Now, hey, do good. Give forward, be the change that's needed, be like Hannah Kain, and we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.